Welcome to Off Panel. Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper. And right now, we've got a special emergency all Bendis edition podcast with the AV Club's Oliver Sava. You ready to do this, Oliver?
I'm ready.
So, the news of the day, for listeners who don't know, I doubt you don't know, because as Phil Hester pointed out on Twitter, it's the first time that a comic creator has trended without dying. So, congratulations, Brian Michael Bendis. Brian Michael Bendis, long the king of Marvel and the leader of their writer rank, signed an exclusive deal with DC Comics. We don't know anything about what he's doing, save for the fact he'll probably be writing comics, but it's crazy. Oliver, I want to start with where you're at, or where you were at when you first heard the news. On a 1 to 10 scale, how shocked were you by it?
Oh man, I think this is the closest I'm going to get to a solid 10.
Yeah.
I feel since, oh god, not to bring it back to Runaways, but Joss Whedon being announced as the writer on that book years and years ago. That's a personal thing. I think that this is way, way bigger for just the state of superhero comics. It's a gigantic bombshell in a way that's actually really exciting. I loved reading the reactions this morning.
I saw a lot of people comparing it to when Kirby went to DC, and
Yep.
I don't know if it's quite at that level, because Kirby was one of the people who built Marvel Comics. But it is, I mean, I'm not saying it's not shocking, but what do you think what's the closest analog you can think of?
The thing with Kirby is there's kind of this vibe of getting back at your employer by him going to DC because he was mistreated so badly in Marvel. Whereas Bendis is a hardcore company man. He made bank at Marvel. He worked with Marvel Film, he worked with Marvel Studios. He worked on Marvel TV shows. He was a creative consultant for the entire Marvel brand.
Right.
Kirby was just part of the comic section. He is so deep. Bendis is so deeply entrenched in Marvel culture right now that it is pretty shocking to see him going to DC. At the same time, I totally get it, and I think I have kind of a theory as to why.
Ooh, I was going to ask, why do you think it happened?
I think it's a mix of different things going on editorially at Marvel that are kind of a mess. Just this Marvel Legacy relaunch, renumbering, whatever the hell you want to call it. The fact that I can't even put a solid branding on Marvel Legacy is an issue. But the mix of that, a lot of crossovers that really failed to resonate with, I'm sure a lot of people bought them, but I know that the critical community didn't really like it. And I know that social media conversations tended to be toward the negative side for stuff like Civil War II, Secret Empire. But the thing is, Bendis's track record at Marvel, once they really started developing properties in film and television, Bendis flocked to those books.
Right.
Bendis always went to stuff that was about to get serious mainstream attention. So the big one in my head is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Where that's about to be a movie nobody really knows if it's going to do well. Bendis is in he's, I think, close enough to the process of making those movies that he knows if it's going to be a hit or not. And I feel inside Marvel, they knew Guardians was going to be huge because it was so well constructed and such a different direction for Marvel Studios. But Bendis, he put himself in that book a year before the movie debuted. They had a big artist that went with him. And Guardians didn't end up being super crazy successful in sales just because over time it diminished the way every book does.
Mm-hmm.
But he was there so that there were new Guardians trades that had the movies lineup and had his name on them that he was getting residuals on. He did Old Man Logan right when there's about to be a new Old Man Logan. He was always kind of in touch with that film and TV. What's the word I'm looking for? Something with an S. Why can't I remember it right now? Synergy. The synergy between the film, TV, comics world. And I think DC is very, very attracted by that, probably put in a great offer because he can fill that consultant role. But I also think Bendis is seeing that Justice League's about to hit. I mean, I don't know if it'll be a critical success, but it's going to make so much money. It's like that movie, no matter what, globally, it's going to do extremely well. And I mean, Bendis probably knows that there's going to be some more eyes on Superman comics, on Batman comics. I mean, God forbid Wonder Woman, but I mean, I feel like she's going to end up in his hands at some point because he finds a way. He finds a way to get to like every character that is in a prominent position elsewhere in pop culture.
Well, the thing I don't know, and I mean, obviously neither of us would be able to tell this exactly, but did he go to those books because he pursued them, or because he was placed there, or a combination of both? Because like for Marvel in particular, you talk to people at Marvel, and a lot of them they have no idea what's going on in the movie side. Like that stuff is just completely outside their world. And like, you know, they know that Guardians is coming as a movie, but they don't really know the intricacies and the details of that. One thing I do think that's very advantageous for his DC deal is with Jeff Johns and Diane Nelson being so intimately involved these days, there's definitely a lot more overlap between the comic creative and movie creative side.
Yep.
So it's pretty interesting. But I don't know. I mean, I was trying to think about something that I would think was equally shocking. I think it's probably the most shocked I've been by comics news since probably the New 52.
Yeah, and even this, just like that Marvel to DC jump is always really exciting when you see a big creator, and like it doesn't really get much more. You don't have a bigger company man at Marvel than Bendis right now.
No.
Like there's nobody else that I can think that's been writing in Marvel for this long that has written so many different Marvel properties and never ever written for DC. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think he's written like a short story or something years ago. But like he does not have a DC catalog the way that I guess Jason Aaron, that's more Vertigo or whatever, but he's still worked with the company closely enough that I wouldn't be so shocked as I am with Bendis, which also like there's all kinds of questions we have. Is he going to be doing creator-owned stuff at DC? Will he be doing a Vertigo book?
Ooh, I mean, I hadn't thought of that.
Like, if I would put my money on Aquaman as
really?
Bendis's first big book. Aquaman movie. That's the next movie.
True.
That's the next one. Like, Aquaman is their DC is clearly putting a bunch of attention on Aquaman, and that Dan Abnett has been writing that book for like 2 years now, and it's like, I think that book is the best it's been in, I mean, at least in all of Abnett's run, but I think even since before the New 52. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Aquaman is at a high point right now, but a lot of that is because of the artwork. But I can so easily see Dan Abnett either leaving that book, getting pushed off that book, so that they'll give Bendis the opportunity to write whatever. And I also wouldn't be surprised if we got a much closer looking, he looks more like Jason Momoa on the comics, which they could potentially do. Like, they could promote it as diversity and having somebody who is of like Polynesian heritage. And of course that fits with Bendis, who is always writing people of color
right.
in lead roles instead of there being a person of color writing them.
Mm-hmm. The books that he could be doing are very much different to the books that I'd want him to be doing for DC. And It is kind of interesting. I was trying to think of what it could be. I threw out Justice League at you, and you rightfully said Priest is on it. Steve Orlando's on it. I don't know if they'd move them off, especially because they're not that far into their runs. JSA is a possibility, I still think. You know, one that might be interesting is Titans, like Teen Titans or Titans, because they have the show that's kicking off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, like, recent Bendis has kind of been recent Wade for me, where it's, like, don't let them next to, like, near teen characters. Right. I don't want to hear their version of teen speak anymore. That may have worked for me when I was, like, even 5 years ago when I was reading his all-new X-Men. But even then, those characters were like 60s teens, so they kind of just sounded like regular Bendis adults anyway.
Right.
But with slightly more, like, exaggerated emotions. But, like, that's part of the reason why I haven't really dug Bendis's work over the last few years, that switch kind of hits, like it flips in your head where it's like, wow, his characters really do sound the same a lot of the time.
Right.
And it's maybe not even that, but it's the cadence of the dialogue feels so just like unwavering in a way that I get kind of bored reading a lot of Bendis comics, which is really unfortunate because he works with some of the best artists.
Yeah.
Like I've heard that Infamous Iron Man is really good. I have to check it out. I might check it out this week. But like, I don't know. I mean, I think Aquaman is going to be that would be a surprise for everybody. And I think DC's loving that like shock factor.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like the most obvious book is like him and Malave on Batman.
If you could pick one book for him to write, like that you would actually genuinely be interested in reading, what would you pick?
This is so hard.
I mean,
I would like to see him. Like, part of me wants to see him go back to his roots and do something that's like more hard boiled. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen people say they'd love to see him on like. Some people. One person I saw suggested like a Renee Montoya book.
That was me.
I saw it. Okay. And then I saw another. I think then there were two because I know another friend of mine also suggested a Renee Montoya book, which I think would work, or just a straight up the question book with both questions. But I also saw a Daily Planet pitch where it's a book about the Daily Planet staff. I think that could be good. I don't know. I haven't liked his recent work so much, and I'm trying to think about why I don't really like that. Is it because he's working with such kind of, now the stories are so big and firmly in that superhero fantasy realm, and I want to see him put one foot back on the ground? That could be it. And I feel like Batman would be that big, take him back down, work on a character with no powers. Maybe it would be well, does Bendis do single issue stories anymore?
I could see him doing that because of Daredevil. But, I mean, we're a long time past that version of Bendis. I don't know. Like, when somebody suggested Batman to me, I was just like, not to just play Bendis for his tropes, because I actually like Bendis generally, but it's hard to imagine Batman having a bunch of scenes around a breakfast table. And... You know, I know that's a pretty like typical Bendis trope, but at the same time, it's a trope for a reason. I don't know. I was thinking about it, and it's interesting. I think I've told you this before. I have this theory about Bendis that he's much better at like operating in his own sandbox, where he doesn't have to be part of the overall universe. Like, you know, you look at Ultimate Spider-Man, he was able to just do his own thing, or you look at like Daredevil or Alias. Like, these are books that really like. Largely weren't huge for Marvel at the time, so he could do kind of whatever he wanted. And I kind of think that would be better for Marvel, or for DC, for him to take a book like that. But at the same time, it's like, do you pay a guy a lot of money for him to do like a Daily Planet book? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think that it's going to be potentially, and they are going to try to give him as much freedom as possible, maybe. Like, I can so easily see DC taking this as the opportunity to do kind of their own Ultimate line, but I think that's kind of what like the Earth One graphic novels are supposed to be, but maybe giving Bendis just his own book to do whatever he wants with the DCU. But that kind of brings back flashbacks of like Stan Lee does Catwoman, or Stan, like right. that was what they were called, right? Like, oh God, it had some sort of more like quippy name, the Stan Lee Project. But I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Bendis do that, where it's like building these characters from scratch. I just kind of want to see him working with just the classic versions of these characters.
Yeah, I could see you mentioning like creator owned. I could see him being kind of the flagship guy that they build both their new Evergreen line that they've been talking about, where Jim Lee had mentioned like doing Evergreen graphic novels, and he mentioned Neil Gaiman and how it might be writer driven. I could see that, and I could see him like doing something big for the Vertigo relaunch. That would be really interesting. But I'm curious. Let's switch it from what it means for Bendis. What do you think? What does this mean for DC? Like, this is obviously a huge move, and it's also taking something away from Marvel. But what does it mean for DC for you?
That's a tricky one for me, because I think that I can't look past Bendis's connection to the film and TV aspect, and I just feel like DC Comics is going to get more intertwined with that aspect, and they've already been doing that over the years. But I just think that that relationship is going to get stronger and stronger, and Bendis is going to potentially kind of be used as a person that can bring those movie elements into the comics world. But in general, what it means for DC is that they now have the ability to pull away one of the most prominent creators at their rival company, but not one of the most influential creator at Marvel Comics in the last 20 years, and they can have them switch sides.
Mm-hmm.
And those allegiances, I mean, money's money. It was probably money that brought him over, but like those allegiances mean a lot to fans.
Right.
So it's like this Marvel guy, he's now at DC. Like that's crazy. What is Marvel doing wrong? I feel like it's kind of a blast to Marvel's reputation right now, which is already not that good.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel's been really struggling over the last 2 years. Like we've talked about this multiple times.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and I do think it is kind of interesting how you look at it from DC's perspective, and it's almost like the biggest change is in the fact that they've all like kind of hamstrung their competitor.
Yeah.
And for DC, I mean, I think I don't know honestly. Like this isn't like casting aspersions about Bendis, but I honestly don't know if he is like the instant sell he used to be back like at his Avengers peak. Like
No, but people are curious.
Yeah.
They're going to be curious.
And I think they'll promote the hell out of it. Like I think that we'll see like ads in the DC books talking about how Bendis. I mean, like they did the Kirby is coming things, like those house ads. They were talking about Kirby is coming, and I think that they'll probably do the same thing for Bendis because like it's that big of a deal. He's one creator that people actually know the name of, and that we'll talk about in the comic shops. It'll be really interesting, but it all really depends on how they deploy him. But I think it'll mean an uptick for sales, and I certainly think that I've been very pro DC in the way that they've been handling things, and this is like one hell of a bold maneuver. Like I couldn't believe it when I heard it.
Yeah, I just realized what Bendis. I mean, I think that this is not as much a long shot as I think, but if he's going to get a Justice League book, Justice League International with Kevin Maguire.
Yeah. Yep.
Because Bendis lured Kevin Maguire to Marvel after the Justice League 3000 debacle, and I definitely think that Bendis going to DC is enough to also bring Kevin Maguire with him, and I could very easily see Bendis working on a JLI book that is humor-centric, potentially has a lot of the same cast as the original JLI, especially that would be a good time to bring back, like to put Ted Kord in a prominent position, which would also get people talking. I mean, I get Ted Kord as in the Blue Beetle book right now, but nobody's really talking about that book.
Right.
And I think that could be if Bendis is willing to do it, a fun way to kind of comment on his Marvel past too, because he can make all kinds of characters that are just analogs for different Marvel characters and just totally fuck around with that and have some fun, because that's what JLI is all about, like keeping it light, like, and building a fun ensemble. So we'll see. I don't think Bendis is kind of a king of team books, but I could see something like that happening.
I could too, partially because I think a lot of creators wouldn't want to even touch Justice League International, but I don't think Bendis cares. Like, I don't think that bothers him.
Not at all. I'm sure he'd love it, especially if he got the chance to do it with Kevin Maguire.
Right.
Like, he would jump at that. He loves him.
Yeah. So that's actually one thing I want to talk about. I want to ask what this means for Marvel, but I think one of the underrated parts about all this is Bendis is a talent bringer. Like he's kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a comparison. All I'm coming up with right now is like a lighthouse. So it's like people are like, oh, we got to go to that because like he's like somebody who opens doors for, or he opens doors for Marvel to bring in variant creators. And I think DC is going to totally capitalize on that. I mean, think about all the creators he works with that he has tight relationships with. Like Sarah Pichelli doesn't really work with anybody else. Dave Marquez doesn't really work with anybody else.
Yeah, but Maliv. I don't know if stuff like Kelly and Marquez is that they don't want to work with anybody else. Like
Yeah.
I'm on the opposite end where I'm like, I really hope Kelly does not follow Bendis to whatever he does at DC. Like I want her to I want to see her work with somebody else so badly.
Right.
Like because there are other writers that could give her material that really, really pushes her and shows off what craziness she could do. Because I don't think that this current Spider-Man book is doing it. I
Right.
don't think I don't think that she gets pushed far enough, and like I want to see somebody challenge her, and I want to see just the limits of what she can do. Which is at this point, I don't know what that would be. Same with Dave Marquez. Like he's been with Bendis during this huge like evolutionary period of his career, and he's grown so much with Bendis. But I'd like to see them team up with another person. At the same time, so I guess there's something to be said about like long-term creative relationships. Like I think about Brubaker and Phillips and how like I love seeing them working together, and I would always be willing to check out something they do together. But with Bendis, part of it is also that I just have been reading his books over the last couple years. Like I check in and then I check out.
Well, you also have faith that Brubaker will bring the most out of Phillips, which you don't have with Bendis and Pichelli. But I guess I meant it more as like I do think that he actually attracts talent because he's got so many relationships. It's like unbelievable.
It's like Mark Miller too. Mark Miller is the same way where they have. I mean, I think Miller also like lures people to his work because he has so much of that Hollywood money, so he can pay extremely well. But yeah, I mean, Bendis has worked on gigantic characters. He has that fan base that people go to superhero comics to get.
Right.
Like superhero comics is so much a stepping stone still, which is just such a huge surprise to me, given that I feel like the bookstore market is so much more lucrative in the long term than superhero stuff. But for a lot of people, they still see Marvel and DC as the thing that makes a superstar.
Well, I mean, for a lot of them, it's what they always dreamed of because they grew up reading the comics, so they want to do the same thing. But
Yeah.
I do think that it's I don't know. I mean, I think that one of the underrated things that nobody's really talking about is like Marvel didn't just lose Bendis today. I mean, they lost arguably, and I know he's been doing stuff for DC for a little bit now, but they lost Coipel. I mean, he's on a creator-owned book, wherever the hell it's being published with Miller now.
On Netflix, by Netflix, I think digitally.
Well,
Like I don't even think
and
it's
print.
printed.
No. It said
It is print too.
yeah, it said in the EW article print, but I think I'm not certain that that's going to be true. I'm the person who was perpetuating that theory for the entire time since that deal was announced that Netflix was getting into publishing comics. I don't know for sure. I feel like that EW article is too vague. So it remains to be seen. But either way, they lost Coipel too, and like Coipel is somebody who moves the needle sales wise. I think like people love his stuff. So they lost two things. But what do you think this means for Marvel? Like, is this? Do you think this is really bad news, or do you think there's silver linings here?
No, I don't think there's a silver lining there. I mean, I think a lot about which I guess it was a quote that was taken out of context, and I'm going to continue taking it out of context and playing telephone with it. But just that comment at the retailers summit or conference or whatever with
the diversity
there
thing?
are no there are like the diversity thing, but also like there are no more superstar artists. Like I think it was Axel Alonso just saying that putting a big name artist on a book doesn't make it sell copies.
Right.
And I think that probably offended a good amount of Marvel artists. And then, of course, DC, like two weeks later, announces this. What was it? Is it Dark Matter?
Yeah,
or
no, they
what's that?
changed it, I think.
Yeah, whatever it's called now. And they were like, this is going to be artist driven. And like you see the house ad for Damage has Tony Daniel credited before Robert Venditti. So it's like artists are driving this initiative or whatever. So I think that was potentially a vote of confidence for people, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more names, very, very familiar Marvel names at DC over the next few months.
No, I meant like with the Bendis front though. Do you think it's pure bad news for Marvel that he departed, or do you think there's silver linings there? I mean, I have to admit,
Oh yeah,
like,
even with no, I still don't. I mean, I don't know what this. Oh, of course. What am I talking about? That means that Bendis isn't on certain Marvel books for the future. Of course, duh. Like he's not on Fantastic Four, which I was so scared was going to happen because it's kind of like the last big Marvel property. I guess he co-wrote some issues of that in Ultimate, so it was like Ultimate Fantastic Four with Mark
right?
Miller,
Yeah,
but he's not going to be writing that Fantastic Four book when it happens. Which woohoo! And Miles is free. Jessica Jones is free. Like, get Chelsea Kane on that book as soon as possible.
right.
Like, I don't know how long Riri Williams is going to be around, but she's free too now. So I'll be very interested to see who fills Bendis' spot on those books. And hopefully it's just like they don't disappear.
But I mean, he's not really doing that many big books right now. What is he doing? He's Defenders, Invincible Iron Man, Infamous Iron Man, Jessica Jones, and Spider Man. Like
That's
those.
5 books, though. That's a lot of books still.
I know, I know. I think so. I definitely think that there's three things that this does. One or two good, one bad, or two bad, one good. It continues the super weird vibe that surrounds Marvel, that like they're just falling apart, and that's really not a great undercurrent that's going on. Two, I think they're really missing star power on the writing side because they have Aaron, and then they have like Slot, who people are kind of mixed on at times, and they have Soul, but I don't really know how much these guys are moving the needle because like Astonishing X-Men isn't lighting the world on fire. But the good thing, I do actually think that this could have creative growth, or that could lead to creative growth for them, because I feel like he's been such a huge part of their plans for so long, and he's just so essential to Marvel that they probably had to factor him in every decision, like when it comes to like the overall like world of Marvel, that he would get books like Guardians, and like all these books would always be earmarked, which is why you always thought he would get Fantastic Four. Now it's like they can kind of approach things without having to factor him in, and maybe that's going to open to some, I don't know, creative gains. Maybe like people like Donny Cates and Ed Brisson are going to like really, take it to the next level. Like I just read Redneck
Yeah.
Volume 1 last night. I think Donny Cates is really talented, and I think he's got
Oh yeah.
potential.
I mean, I think that Donnie's going to surprise. I mean, I'm not going to be that surprised because I've been reading his stuff for the last few years, and yeah, I think it's really good, and I think he works with artists really, really well. But this month, Doctor Strange and Thanos, and I have pretty high hopes for both of them. I mean, it really helps that Walta is on Doctor Strange, like Walta and Belair. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, it looks so good.
And like Jeff Shaw is like a superstar artist in the making as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's really versatile, and his art style in those preview pages for Thanos, like he started off being very much kind of like his art reminded me a lot of Sean Murphy, like Sean Murphy, Raphael Albuquerque, and now it's kind of going into more of a Cloypole meets Jerome Opeña look that's like a lot more detailed, but like I kind of going a little more manga. I mean, I'm very, very interested. And I think the thing with Marvel is they need to find their next Bendis.
Yeah.
They need to find, and I mean, DC needs to find the next Jeff Johns or whatever too. Who's going to be that creator that steps up and really like lights the world on fire? And I think the closest that they've got right now, I mean, in terms of new talent, is like Tom King with like Mr. Miracle. That the hype behind that book is just huge right now. Like It's massive. That book the sales on it are growing issue to issue, which is like unheard of.
Yeah. I just, the thing I don't know, and I talked about this on Twitter a little bit, is I don't know who, like you said, they don't, who's the next Jeff Johns at DC, like who are the architects that are going to be guiding these universes? Because that, I think that in my opinion, one of the big problems at Marvel is the fact that they don't really feel like they have a cohesive direction in their books. It just kind of feels like all those books exist in this universe and they're kind of meandering, and there's some that I love and there's some that I don't read. And they need somebody like, they need like a Hickman type, or they need like a new level of architects, of people who are actually...
Well, I mean, I think Al Ewing could do it because he's super good and he's written a lot of different kinds of books, but he just hasn't really like taken off with fans that much. And I wonder if part of it is publicity from Marvel, if they don't publicize his work enough. I also don't think he's had the best luck with artists. I think if they pair, like right now on Royals, I think is the best artists he's ever had, where he's working with Javier Rodriguez. And then like this Inhumans book he's doing after has Mike Del Mundo. So I'm wondering if Marvel is trying to like really put eyes on Ewing's work, because he has a deep back catalog at Marvel. He's really good. He's really good at plotting, long-term plotting, and he's really good at looking at what people have done in the past and putting his own spin on it. Like his Avengers is a really fun mix of like Claremont X-Men with Hickman Avengers. And I think he's so good, but I don't see Marvel really giving him the chance to take that architect role. Who else? And like Marvel has Mark Waid still, but like I haven't enjoyed Mark Waid's Avengers books really at all. I liked the first issue of Captain America, but even like Black Widow kind of underwhelmed me. I thought it was gorgeous, but the story was like, yeah, okay. Aaron, of course, like Aaron's the big person at Marvel right now, but even then it's like he's already doing a bunch of other stuff at Image. Like his time is split.
Right. I feel like Jonathan Hickman is probably sitting somewhere just laughing at all this right now, because his mentions are probably getting blown up about people who want him to go to Marvel and DC. And it's just like, I don't know. He probably is just like, this is fucking ridiculous.
Oh yeah, he don't give a shit no more. Like, yeah, he's like, I'm out of that game. Like, I'm tired of dealing with that crap. I'm making. I did what I wanted to do at Marvel, which is build up a big old audience, have a bunch of graphic novels with my name on them, with this like the Avengers comics at Borders, Borders. Oh my god, I just dated myself really bad. Barnes and Noble.
They didn't even have Borders in Alaska, Oliver. What are you doing?
Borders, the bookstore in my heart.
Oh, I loved it. It was so much better than Barnes and Noble.
But like those are gonna sell at Christmas or whatever. He'll get a little check in August of the next year with some money on there. Yeah. I don't know. I bet residuals are shit at Marvel anyway. But yeah, I'm really curious to find out who's going to be that person that like lights up Marvel Comics, lights up DC. I mean, it would be great if it was a woman. Yeah. Like I think that. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Ta-Nehisi Coates ends up having a bigger role in the larger Marvel universe. Like he is taking on some more books. I don't know how interested he is in doing that, but I could see it happen. Like Greg Pak's a really good writer. I'm not super enthusiastic about his books right now, but I think that like Mech Cadet U is still really great. And like coming out of Thor, seeing how much of it's pulled from Planet Hulk and Gladiator Hulk, it's like, you know, like he's had a pretty big role in like building up Marvel mythology over the last 10 years, 15 years. But yeah, I want to know who that next person is. I would love for it to be G. Willow Wilson, but like she's a novelist, and I know like over the last year or so there was some family stuff that like kind of just kept her from putting that much work into Marvel Comics. But I think that like G. Willow Wilson, when Marvel does their next crossover, like she should be writing it. She should be on that kind of a big book that gets a huge push. Yeah. Like I probably would have liked Al Ewing's Civil War 2 better than Bendis's.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a story that could have worked, but like I remember liking the tie-ins I liked his New Avengers tie-ins. Ultimates totally went off the rails, but that's because Bendis messed up Carol Danvers' character like irredeemably, and she's like still suffering. I don't know who's going to pull Captain Marvel out of this ongoing slump that it's in, because that book needs like a huge surge of creative energy before that movie happens.
You know, one thing I was thinking about was, you know, people talk about the influence that like manga and like Image and like creator-owned comics and stuff has had on the creators of today, because it's like, you know, they're approaching comics a little bit differently and everything like that. But there's part of me that wonders if like we're going to enter a generation of people who like of writers who are just not really that familiar with the way that, you know, superhero events and structures really work. And if they're just not that interested in those types of stories, and if we're going to start seeing, I think we're already kind of seeing ramifications of things like that, because it just feels like Marvel is wayward, and a lot of their creators are individually talented, and their books are great, but maybe they don't work in the way that Marvel books normally work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Marvel books that I enjoy the most are definitely going in a different direction than what would be considered the traditional Marvel style. I mean, like, Squirrel Girl,
Yeah.
like that's kind of the best example. But yeah, there's quite a few of those books that they just don't sell.
Right.
That's the problem. They don't sell in comic shops. They might sell really great on Amazon or in a bookstore, but they don't sell in comic shops, which is what they care the most about.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting. Last thing I want to bring up to you, just because I think it's hilarious, is somebody did suggest Justice League International to me, but probably my favorite suggestion I've gotten from anybody so far is somebody said that Bendis should write an Etrigan the Demon book. And I thought that was fucking hilarious because can you imagine him writing? Because he rhymes everything. Like,
Oh God, that'd be awful. I hate it. No,
come on, you
thank
know
you.
it'd be funny.
God, yeah. I guess I don't really ever want to read it. I mean, I should read like Jack Kirby Demon issues or something because I'm not super huge on Etrigan. I guess there's a new book coming out really like this month actually that
Is he a
could be really
Mystic Hero?
good. No, but he has his own series. There's a new Demon book by don't know the writer's name. Writer I'm not familiar with, but Brad Walker is doing the art.
Oh,
I like Brad Walker. Lee Luffridge is coloring it. So, who's Andrew something? I know he has like a Greg Rucka endorsement. So I mean, Greg Rucka's good at doing comics.
I could
Oh
easily.
man,
Man, it's interesting. Like, it is kind of fascinating how much it feels like momentum is completely on DC's side right now. Not to make it a DC versus Marvel thing, but it's really fascinating. It just seems like everything is going DC's way, and it's
yeah,
kind of incredible.
yeah. I mean, especially because I've been covering comics for 6, 7 years now,
Hmm.
which kind of covered. I started off in that year before the New 52,
Right.
which I thought I really enjoyed a lot of what DC was doing then, but that all just kind of stops, gets completely relaunched. This huge editorial initiative that gets off to an incredibly rocky start. You have all these stories coming out of DC about editorial interference. Creators can't do what they want to do. And then time goes on. DC starts learning its lessons. DCU happens, DCYOU,
Hmm.
which I thought was really great. It indicated that they were going to bring in some new people, start having different voices for their titles. And I think that primed me as a reader for, I guess, for Rebirth, although it doesn't really make sense because DCU was so much going into like set weird other corners of the DC universe versus Rebirth, which was all about like streamlining their line. But I think that the benefit of taking that year to explore these different creative opportunities gave DC the confidence to potentially do some different stuff with established names. So
Hmm.
that's how you get Priest on Deathstroke. That's how you get Gene Luen Yang building his whole little corner of Chinese Justice League characters. And
Hmm.
I think New Superman has been this fantastic book that really flies under the radar, but I hope that it does well in bookstores just based on Yang's name.
Right.
Because that is a really, really fun book. And then, of course, I mean, I'm so into Priest on Deathstroke, but like Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman, like What a Year That Had, Superman was just delightful. It's a little messy right now, but like that first year of Superman was really, really fun. And then Tom King's Batman, I'm really hit or miss on, but like when it's a hit, I really, really enjoy it, and it's had some pretty sweet art.
Yeah. And of course, there's Mr. Miracle, which everybody loves, but that's not officially part of Rebirth.
No, yeah.
It is really interesting. The last thing I want to say is you brought up Tom King as like I don't know, kind of somebody that could be like the architect type person. I just don't really see him as that type. I don't know. Like he's
Yeah, I
more
mean, I'm just trying to think of a person that's just a huge name.
right.
That's like becoming that
Snyder.
has this really intense momentum. Yeah, and Snyder is firmly in that architect position now. Like,
Right.
Snyder is there. He's doing this metal event that is bringing, like, I feel like that's how you know somebody's an architect. If they write an event that launches a bunch of new books.
Right. Yeah,
And that's what he's doing.
and that's been crushing it. But anyways, all right, that's all I got for you. Thank you for the Bendis talk. Congratulations on him not writing Fantastic Four. I know that's important for you, but I will be very interested to see where this goes. It's
Me too.
an incredible news story, but yeah, it's wild. I never expected to see the day that Bendis was going to leave Marvel, but I guess it had to happen eventually. Maybe.
Yeah, to write Aquaman. I'm telling you, we're gonna get a Bendis on. I mean, you know who would absolutely kill it on Aquaman is Sarah Kelly.
Right. Yeah. Well, would you really want to have Step John Sedgwick leave the book?
Well, he can't do it monthly. That's the thing.
Oh, there you go.
He's doing it
Alternate.
monthly right now, but we're about to get Riccardo Federici doing some, I think, an arc or at least a couple issues. And I definitely think that Sejic, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I think that he could use extra lead time, and Kelly's going to, not that she's on it, but she would absolutely destroy underwater stuff. And you just know she puts so much detail in it. Oh, God, it'd be so gorgeous.
I love that you just went from earlier in the podcast saying that you want her separate to, God, she'd be really good on Aquaman with him.
I don't know if she'd be great on Aquaman with him, but she would be great on Aquaman. That would be one of the benefits of her coming there. I just have this weird feeling that's going to be Aquaman, although a lot of people joked about Cyborg.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll have to talk again once everything gets shaken out. But Oliver, as per usual, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Sorry I totally derailed your outro, which I just derailed again. I'm an awful guest. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this special emergency episode of Off Panel with AV Club's Oliver Sava. You can find him on Twitter at Oliver Sava. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Schipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Dan Lee, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Brian Dickerson, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mayle, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Stables, Chris Morris, Johan Barander, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Matt Battaglia, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.